Donald Trump just said something nobody, and I mean nobody, ever expected him to say. In front of the cameras, in front of the world, in front of King Charles himself. The President of the United States pointed at the King of England, looked the press dead in the eye, and admitted, "I was very jealous." Yes, that word, jealous, from the one man on earth who never admits weakness. But here's what they're not telling you on the news. King Charles didn't just outshine Trump. He walked into Trump's White House, sat at Trump's dinner table, and roasted him to his face. Not once, 3 times. And Trump just sat there, smiling, clapping. Today, I'm breaking down every single moment from April 28th, 2026. The historic speech, the savage jokes, the gift that stunned the room, and the one quiet line from King Charles that has every diplomat in Washington whispering tonight. Stay with me until the end. The last clip is the one everybody's sharing. Let me set the scene. This wasn't just any state visit. It was the first official British state visit to the United States since Queen Elizabeth in 2007, timed for America's 250th birthday, and it came at the worst possible moment for the so-called special relationship. Just weeks ago, President Trump publicly trashed British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, called him a coward over Iran, said he was no Winston Churchill, slapped tariffs on British goods. NATO allies were nervous. The UK government needed to fix this fast, so they sent in their secret weapon, the 77-year-old king. And what King Charles did over the next 12 hours, first at Congress, then at the White House, was a masterclass in diplomatic warfare. He never once attacked Trump. He never raised his voice. He smiled the whole time, and he absolutely demolished him. Charles walked into a joint session of Congress and got something Donald Trump has never gotten, a full bipartisan standing ovation. Democrats, Republicans, everyone on their feet. And then he started talking. He praised the alliance. He thanked the troops. Classic stuff. But then, watch this carefully. He started slipping in jabs. Subtle, polite, devastating. Jab number 1, NATO. Trump has spent months attacking NATO, calling it obsolete, threatening to pull out. So Charles stood there and reminded Congress, in front of cameras, that NATO invoked Article 5 for America after September 11. Every NATO ally sent troops, sent blood, sent treasure to defend the United States. The chamber went silent. Some Republicans looked down at their shoes. Jab number 2, Ukraine. Trump has clashed bitterly with Ukraine, yelled at Zelensky in the Oval Office, cut aid. So King Charles looked out at Congress and said unyielding resolve is needed for the defense of Ukraine. The entire room stood up. The loudest ovation of the day. Even Trump's own allies were on their feet. Jab number 3, the kill shot. Charles warned both nations to ignore the clarion calls to become ever more inward-looking. Read that again. Inward-looking. Every diplomat in that room knew exactly who he was talking about. America first. Trump's whole brand. Charles just called it out to a joint session of Congress without ever saying Trump's name. By the time Charles finished, the standing ovation lasted nearly a full minute. The man had walked into Trump's Capitol, in Trump's country, and gotten a longer ovation than Trump has ever received from his own party. That's why Trump said what he said next. Hours later, White House, state dinner. Trump steps out to greet the king and queen. Reporters are shouting questions, and Trump, without being asked, points at King Charles and says it. He made a great speech. I was very jealous. Stop. Pause. Think about that. This is the man whose entire political identity is built on never backing down, never showing weakness, never giving credit. And he just publicly admitted, on camera, that a foreign king made a better speech than he ever has. But Trump wasn't done. A few hours later, during his dinner toast, in front of every Fox News host, Every cabinet member, the Supreme Court, and the most powerful people in Washington, he said it again, louder. He got the Democrats to stand. I've never been able to do that. I couldn't believe it. The room laughed. Trump laughed, but you could see it in his eyes. He meant it. For years, Trump has been furious that Democrats refuse to stand and applaud during his State of the Union speeches. It eats at him. And here was a 77-year-old British king who walked in and got every single Democrat to rise. For a guy who literally inherited a throne instead of winning an election, Trump couldn't process it. So he said the quiet part out loud. Now here's where it gets wild. Charles stood up to give his own toast, and he came loaded. Roast number one, the French line. Trump has spent years mocking European allies, calling them freeloaders. So Charles, with a perfectly straight face, looked across the table and said, "Dare I say, if it wasn't for us, you'd be speaking French." The room exploded. Even Trump laughed, but that was a reference to the American Revolution, when France helped defeat the British. Charles was reminding the room, you Americans needed allies once too. Don't forget who carried you. Roast number two, the East Wing. A few weeks ago, Trump demolished the East Wing of the White House to build himself a $400 million ballroom. It was controversial. People were furious. Charles couldn't resist. He said he couldn't help noticing the readjustments to the East Wing. And then, I am sorry to say that we British, of course, made our own attempt at real estate redevelopment of the White House in 1814. In 1814, the British Army burned the White House to the ground. King Charles just compared Donald Trump's renovation to a foreign invasion, to his face. And the room laughed, because they had to. What else could they do? Roast number three, the gift. Charles handed Trump a bell, an actual ship's bell from a British submarine called HMS Trump, launched in 1944. Then he said, "Should you ever need to get hold of us, well, just give us a ring." Translate that? We're your allies. Pick up the phone. Stop ignoring us. A king, smiling, telling the President of the United States to call them more often.
While handing him a bell that literally rings, it was the most polite, most British, most savage thing you'll see in diplomacy this decade. Here's why this video matters. What you just watched wasn't a friendly visit. It was a soft power masterclass. The British monarchy, an institution Americans fought a revolution to escape from, just walked into Washington and reminded the President of the United States who his real friends are. And Trump, to his credit, knew it. That's why he said jealous. Not impressed, not honored, jealous. Because he watched a man without an army, without a vote, without a single piece of legislation to his name, command a room he himself can't. Some people are saying this was the moment the special relationship was saved. Others are saying it was the moment the world saw exactly how isolated Trump has become. You decide. But one thing is certain. This state visit will be studied in diplomacy textbooks for decades. If this video showed you something the mainstream media glossed over, hit that like button. Share it with one person who needs to see it. And tell me in the comments, was Charles being polite? Or was he sending Trump a message? I'll see you in the next one.